We are here on the Mount of Olives, about halfway down from the top of the Mount of Olives, on the way down toward the Garden of Gethsemane. Gethsemane lies at the foot of the Mount of Olives, somewhere down there below us. And Gethsemane is a place that, like hardly any other, reveals the human side of Jesus, his loneliness, his fear, and the betrayal. Down there in Gethsemane, his disciples fell asleep, even though they were supposed to keep watch with him. There, Jesus prayed in deep agony. There, he was betrayed by Judas. And from there, he was led away like a criminal. In this video, we will look at the different places connected with that night. First, the grotto, where, according to Christian tradition, Jesus came with his disciples that night. Then, the garden, with its ancient olive trees. And finally, we will see the rock, the place where Jesus prayed in agony. Let's go down now to the places of that night. As we walk down the slope of the Mount of Olives, we are approaching the place called Gethsemane, one of the most significant places in the life of Jesus. Why is that? It is one of the most significant places because here, Jesus made the decision to go to the cross. And because here, he suffered terrible anguish for the first time, anguish of the soul so deep that even the body suffered. And directly above the place where this happened, a church was later built. Inside it, the bare rock was left exposed, on which, according to tradition, Jesus struggled in prayer that night. That rock is what we will see in a moment. So, where did the Passion of Christ begin? It did not begin at Golgotha, and it did not begin before Pilate with the interrogation and the sentence. It began down there before us on the Mount of Olives, in the silence of an olive grove. What happened here 2,000 years ago? On the evening of the Last Supper, in the night before his way to the cross, Jesus left the city after the meal with his disciples. They crossed the Kidron Valley, which lies between the city and the Mount of Olives, and they went to the Mount of Olives, as they often did. In the Gospel of Luke, it says, Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives. And they came to a place called Gethsemane. Matthew and Mark mention the place explicitly by this name. The name Gethsemane comes from the Hebrew gat shemanim and means oil press. The names and places that the New Testament speaks about here are not fictional settings. The Mount of Olives has carried this name long before the time of Jesus, and it still does today. Already in the Old Testament, it is mentioned as the Mount of Olives, and Gethsemane, oil press. There are concrete indications of this here as well, in the grotto to which we are now going. To this day, there are traces there showing that an oil press once stood in that place. If Jesus often went to the Mount of Olives with his disciples, this grotto would have been part of the area where they stayed. According to Christian tradition, Jesus came there with his disciples before going on into the garden. All of this is very significant. Jesus was truly here on the night before his way to the cross, in the very places that you will soon see. These are authentic places. Gethsemane is holy ground. So what happened next when Jesus and his disciples reached Gethsemane? Jesus first went with his disciples into the grotto. From there, he went on into the garden and took Peter, James, and John a little further with him. He then said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Then he moved a short distance away from them, and there, in the darkness of the garden, he fell to the ground and prayed. The Gospels preserve his prayer. "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." From this prayer, we can see that Jesus knew exactly what awaited him. And knowing the unimaginable suffering that lay ahead of him, he struggled in prayer with that reality. The evangelist Luke describes this moment with a remarkable detail. He writes that the sweat of Jesus fell to the ground like drops of blood. One might think that this description is symbolic, but medicine knows this phenomenon. The technical term is hematidrosis, and it can occur when a person is under extreme stress or fear and tiny blood vessels in the sweat glands rupture. Jesus suffered in deep agony. Then he returned to his disciples and found them asleep. 3 times he came back, and 3 times they were sleeping. It was there that Judas came, and with him the men who had come to arrest Jesus. And from Gethsemane, Jesus was led away into the night. And now we have arrived. You will now see all 3 holy places. The garden on the left, where Jesus prayed and his disciples fell asleep. This is the entrance. The grotto, where he came with them, on the opposite side of the garden. And finally, the rock on which he struggled in prayer. First, let's go to the grotto, where that night began. In front of us is the Grotto of Gethsemane. I have been here many times, and very often the grotto is closed, and I have often seen pilgrims come all the way here and not get inside. Today, it is open, so let's take a look inside. Come with me, we are going in. After all that we know, Jesus was often here, and also on that night. To stand in the same space where Jesus also stood 2,000 years ago is deeply moving. An old cistern. The Mother of God with the apostles. The betrayal by Judas. Stay here and keep watch with me. Jesus with his disciples in the grotto. In the background, an oil press. the sleeping disciples. From here, Jesus went with 3 of his disciples into the garden. That is where we are going now. We have left the grotto and are now going into the garden. In this way, we are following the path that is believed to be the one Jesus also walked that night. Now you can see ancient olive trees, descendants of the trees that perhaps had already seen Jesus when he came here. Come with me and let us take a closer look. As we now walk through the Garden of Gethsemane, we are not simply looking at a beautiful old garden. The garden today is small, only about 1,200 square meters, and yet it is one of the most impressive places in Christendom. Among the olive trees of this garden are the famous 8 ancient olive trees of Gethsemane. Scientific studies have shown that they are genetically related, that they come from the same line, and for several of them, it has even been shown that they go back to the 12th century, to the time of the Crusaders. That is something extraordinary, because it means these are not just any trees standing here. An old line of olive trees has been preserved here at this place over many centuries. And the thought is not far away that this line may perhaps go back even further, far back to that time when Jesus himself came here. To this day, olives are harvested here. And to this day, oil is sold here. So the garden still bears the trace of its name, Gethsemane, the oil press. But this garden did not become famous because of its olives. It became famous because Jesus was here. The Gospels tell us that Jesus came here with Peter, James, and John. Here, in this garden, the 3 disciples remained behind. Here, they fell asleep. And here, under the olive trees, Jesus went on alone into the darkness. Here, the suffering had not yet begun in the body. Here, it began in the soul. Here Jesus struggled in prayer. Here he accepted the cup that stood before him. Here the decision was accepted that led to the cross. And here Judas later came to him. I am standing in front of the entrance to the Basilica of the Agony. The garden lies directly to my right. Only a few steps more, and we are standing before the rock floor on which Jesus prayed in agony, and above which this church and several earlier churches before it were built. And now we are going inside. And this is the rock. We are back in the Garden of Gethsemane, and for today we are leaving this place, which for Christians is more than just a historical site. Gethsemane stands for the moment of inner decision, for the struggle in prayer, and for the beginning of the Passion. If you enjoyed this walk, I would be glad to receive a like. And if you would like to see more Christian places in Jerusalem, you can, of course, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being here. Until next time.